There's no two ways about it. Reggie was a mean kid. The Sunday school teachers, his parents, public school teachers have tried everything to settle him down, to make him more sensitive and compassionate. He was just mean. Now his best friend Todd and he spent a lot of time together. One time they're out in the backyard, and it was springtime, early summer, and you know those little white butterflies that just kind of come up from the grass. Reggie snatched one of them and began to immediately pull the wings and legs off of it. Yeah. And Todd said, "Reggie, where heard that butterfly?" Reggie said, "Nah, butterflies don't have feelings." Reggie was like that. He picked on anything that was smaller than he was. I mean, one time they were chasing a cat. Now, Todd was wanting to hold back, but Reggie was insisting they could chase that cat. They chased that cat down an alley, down the street, throwing rocks and sticks at it. That cat ran into this big old garden by this big old house, and Reggie was right behind it, throwing things at it. They got back in that garden, and all of a sudden they heard the door swing open to that house, and a little old woman came out on the front porch. "You get out! I'm going right now!" Well, Reggie stood up and ran out of there, off down the road. But it didn't matter who might startle him or discipline him or try to correct him. Reggie was just mean. And Halloween was Reggie's favorite time. He could come up with some of the most awful, irritating, frightful, scary kinds of costumes and behavior that every kid smaller than he feared for their lives. And in the other year, he was a pirate. And he got as mean and ugly as he could. He got one of those swords, you know, that have a big handle on them. And when you run into somebody, the blade collapses into the handle. It looks like you really stuck him, you know. He got one of those, and he hit a little squirt bottle of ketchup. He would go up to these little kids and then he'd squirt that ketchup, and they'd go, oh, he loved just tormenting little kids. This past year, Halloween was on Sunday night. And you know what that meant? You could go trick-or-treating on Saturday night and Sunday night, 2 nights of Halloween. Reggie had a plan. He figured out he was going to get himself a big old pumpkin, carve it up into a jack-o'-lantern, only cut it out underneath and put it over his head. He'd dress in black cloth and get a flashlight. And he would go to the best houses that gave out the best treats, and he'd hide in the bushes. And then when the little kids would come and get their treats, out there trick-or-treating, he'd rise from the bushes and turn that flashlight underneath that jack-o'-lantern and go, woo! Oh, and it worked. All Saturday night, he was just collecting as much stuff. He was scaring kids. He had 2 garbage sacks full of stuff he'd stolen from the kids. He was dragging that stuff home that night. And there at the other end of the alley that he was going down were the big kids. They'd been out trick-or-treating that night. They saw Reggie dragging those things. They said, "Hey, Pumpkinhead, where are you going? What you got?" Reggie realized they were the big ones. He was the one getting picked on. He took off running, dragging those garbage sacks full of all of that stuff he'd stolen from those kids. Those big kids were coming faster and faster. Finally, he abandoned all that candy. He thought, well, I'll take care of them. And he was running as fast as he could, but that didn't stop those kids. They were still chasing. "Hey, Pumpkinhead, hey, Pumpkinhead." He was running along trying to balance that jack-o'-lantern on his head. He went down this alley, turned that corner, and he came by that garden he remembered just a few days ago. It was in the back of that garden was a pumpkin patch. And he knew what he could do. He ran back into that garden, went back in the pumpkin patch, and laid down in the dark and turned his head over with that black drapery and that jack-o'-lantern on his head. He was just another pumpkin out in the patch. Sure enough, those big kids came running. They saw him go into that garden. They went right behind him, and they were looking around. All of a sudden, heard that door slam open. And that little old lady came out on the porch. "Get out of my garden!" Well, those big kids took off, and they were gone. Reggie was safe. He waited, and relaxed. All was quiet. The woman had gone back in her house. He began to get up. He was stiff. He couldn't get up really. He tried to lift one of his arms. He'd evidently gotten down there in the damp mud of the garden and got kind of stuck. And the suction of the mud was pulling him down. He figured he couldn't. He was trying to get his arms and legs up, and he was just stuck. He says, well, at least I can get this darn old jack-o'-lantern off my head. Well, they worked at it. He couldn't. He got his hands loose and got a hold of it. He couldn't do it. I'd smash it. That wasn't working. Well, he struggled. He'd get one hand loose and then the other would be stuck. He'd get a leg out and try to get his head up. It just seemed that the more he struggled through the night, the more he began to sink down into the garden. The darker, the quieter. Now the next day was Sunday afternoon. Todd's father said to Todd, you want to make a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween tonight? Todd said, oh, that'd be great. He says, well, we find ourselves a place where we can buy ourselves a big pumpkin. Todd said, oh, me and Reggie found a garden the other day with the Lay's got a pumpkin patch out there. Bet we'd get one from her. He said, well, show me where. Well, he led his father down the street, around a few blocks, and went up to that big old house, knocked on the door. This old woman came to the door. She opened up. She was real pleasant. Said, what can I do for you? And Todd said, me and my dad want to buy a pumpkin. She says, oh, tell you what, you just go out into my garden, you pick whatever one you want, and shoot, be $1, nothing much, just whatever you want. All right. Well, Todd and his father went out into the pumpkin patch looking around. There it was. That was a great big pumpkin. Ooh, that'd make a great jack-o'-lantern. Well, he and his dad went over there and got that pumpkin and brought it back up to the house and paid the woman $1 and went back to their house and out in the garage. And Todd's father says, well, let me show you how we carve a pumpkin. Normally we'll cut the top off and then we'll scoop out all of the insides and then we'll make the face we want. Later we'll put a ladder down there. He got a big old butcher knife and set it there on the table, and he was just about to stick that knife into the top of the pumpkin when Todd said, wait a minute, Dad, won't that hurt the pumpkin? Todd's dad said, nah, pumpkins don't have feelings.